Hello everyone, my name is Amber Hernandez and I will be doing a presentation on COVID-19 related discrimination and the mental health effects on Asian American adolescents. Brief history of COVID-19. According to Chaplin 2020, the World Health Organization WHO was alerted about a massive pneumonia cases that started on December 31st, 2019 in Wuhan, China. In March 2020, it was WHO that declared COVID-19 a pandemic. So shortly after, the virus grew rapidly from hundreds to thousands across many other countries. People were severely ill and hospitalized with respiratory complications. Unfortunately, many other cases resulted in deaths. So people who became sick, and not everyone, but some people who became sick or lost loved ones were resentful because it was out of our control. So who are they going to blame? Well, if the origin of the virus came from China, they will blame Asians. Even the ones who are not Chinese, they have been subjected to discrimination and racial slurs. For the social core motive, I chose belonging and trust. The focus of this article is specific to Asian American youths. At a time when teens are influenced by their peers, they want to belong to a group. So, due to the pandemic, it became clear that Asians were being mistreated and excluded. If a person feels excluded, it can damage their mental health. Fisk 2018. Since the pandemic, Asian youths were subjected to bullying in schools, which caused an impact on their sense of belonging. Hermes Dermerdis et al. 2022. As a result, their trust in other people and society is compromised. In other words, they will then feel like the world is not a good place, which caused an us versus them mentality.
What was the sample utilized in the research? By getting IRB approval, researchers started recruitment by posting flyers on Instagram. They also emailed student organizations and Asian American communities. Hermes Dermerdis et al. 2022. The participants that were chosen filled out an informed consent and were also required to get their parents' permission since they were minors. In addition, teens had to meet the requirements. 1. Their ethnicity must be in East Asian countries. 2. Attend high school in the United States. And 3. Take classes. So that was either in person or hybrid classes. In the first 5 months of 2021, they collected 132 surveys and finalized the sample. N equals 114, which consisted of 59 males, 51.8%, 54 females, 47.4%, and 1 transgender person, 0.9%, with a mean age of 16.42 years. Hermes Dermerdis et al. 2022. They were known as East and Southeast Asian American High School Students, ESEAA. I do want to note that 18 of the participants were not included in the study, either because they did not meet the requirements or missing more than 20% of the items in the surveys. More than half of the participants were Chinese and lived in the United States. So that meant that the other half were of Vietnamese, Korean, Thai, Japanese, or Filipino descent. I mentioned this earlier, but even if you weren't of Chinese descent, you were still at risk of being targeted. So now we will go into instrument and procedures.
What instrument procedure did they utilize? Hermes Dermerdis et al. 2022 utilized a descriptive research design which included questionnaires and surveys. Both measured 6 variables: anxiety, depression, trauma, lifetime discrimination, and whether they experienced COVID-associated discrimination online or offline. So for the first variable, anxiety, researchers used a generalized anxiety disorder GAD-7 scale on a 4-point scale. Participants rated the frequency of their symptoms over a 2-week period, so 0 being not at all, 2, 3 being nearly every day. Scores ranged from 0 to 21, with higher scores indicating the severity of their anxiety. Depression. Patient Health Questionnaire for Adolescents, PHQA. Again, participants rated their symptoms over 2 weeks. Score ranged from 0 to 27, with higher scores indicating the severity of their depression. The next variable they measured was trauma. They answered a 15 yes or no questionnaire to indicate whether they were exposed to traumatic events. Lifetime discrimination. They answered just one yes or no questionnaire, so they would answer yes if they experienced trauma due to their Asian American identity. For CAD Online, researchers used 2 subscales, the first one being a 4-item individual online racial discrimination, IORD, and 3 items vicarious online racial discrimination, VORD. So one item would ask, since the COVID outbreak, people have excluded me from a site or group online because of my race or ethnic background. And so they would rate their response on a 6-point scale, 0 being never to 5 almost every day. For CAD Offline, they assessed an in-person CAD from other individuals, so peers in school or adults in school, using a perceived discrimination by peers adults scale, Rosenblum and Way 2004. They use items like they called you names or they've made fun of you. Again, responding on a 5-point scale, 0 being never to 4 being all the time. What were their overall findings? Of most Asian American youths, 82, 71.9%, reported experiencing COVID-associated discrimination online and offline. 93, 81.6%, had witnessed COVID-associated discrimination. And 95, 83.3%, experienced anti-Asian sentiments. Based on the scores, Irmis Demertis 2022 says there was no significant difference between Chinese and non-Chinese ESCAA students who exhibited depression and anxiety symptoms. This meant that non-Chinese youths rated about the same as their Chinese peers for depression and anxiety symptoms. In CAD offline settings, depression and anxiety were higher than the lifetime discrimination and trauma questionnaires. Overall, COVID-associated discrimination were among the highest both online and in person, with online causing the most psychological distress. Irmis Demertis 2022. How can the results of this study be applied to society in general? Since the pandemic, Asian Americans have been subjected to hate crimes, racial slurs, and physical assaults. It shows that even if they are not Chinese, but their race is Asian, they will still be a target of mistreatment and exclusion. Our society has projected their anger and resentment onto people who have nothing to do with the coronavirus. By generalizing a whole race, it will not benefit anyone. COVID-19 associated discrimination is still ongoing, and it's important to consider the psychological distress and trauma that Asian Americans face. Lute et al. 2023 states that racism and xenophobia are still prevalent in the lives of Asian American adolescents in schools. And here are my references.